back to Brashenomics, everyone. This is Heather Moore, and joining me now is Jared Fraser, who has over a decade of experience in the real estate and property management industry. And today, though, we're going to talk a little bit more about home buyers and first-time home buyers, which is perfect because we were just talking about needing insurance for her first-time home buyer. So good transition here. Jared, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good. In the past, you've talked to us about a lot of ways, about how owning property can benefit you and it can enhance your investment portfolio. And you've given us a lot of tips on finding the right investment property, identifying quality renters, promoting good renter and owner relationships, and also the importance of property maintenance. But we're going to shift gears a little bit today and talk about first-time home buyers, which is actually perfect because right now is, the time when everything's starting to get a little busy.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely been picking up, and there's more of an active market in the last month and a half or so. And, right now there's a lot of people who are renting, and they're really seeing buying as a good option now. And that's definitely changing. For the last year or so, the buyers' confidence might not have been there, but now they're seeing that they're paying more or the same as they are in rent as they could be for a new house and be an owner.
Yeah, and I think that some renters probably don't even realize that they might be able to own a home for about roughly the same cost, but it's kind of that thing I was talking about earlier. Reaching out for help, for someone to educate you on what your options are, is a really important piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, definitely. And we're also talking not just monthly payments, even down payments. There still are, zero down options out there or 3%. Some of the properties that are bank owned through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they're offering their own financing incentives. So there is, like you said, if you seek out expert advice, you can get a lot more options and there might be a home purchase that'll work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of walk us through that conversation that you might have, with someone that says, I'm renting, a lot of people have expressed to me that are renters that are friends of mine. There's two sides of the coin. There's either I feel like I'm wasting my money just renting a home and not, investing in something, or I don't really know if I want to make that permanent decision. So walk us through kind of that conversation you have with people trying to figure out which way to go and if home buying is right for them.
Usually it's more long-term planning. Okay. I usually like to look 5 to 7 years out minimum, where you think you're going to be, where do you want to put your money during that time
Not
frame.
If you're going to buy in 5 to 7 years, where do you think you're going to be from right now?
Correct. Okay. Say you buy, if you bought today, are you going to be happy being there in 5-7 years or longer? Because after that amount of time, on average, home values do pick up. So you would build some equity. You are paying down the mortgage, and you're also working against rents going up, because when you lock in on a mortgage, your payment's going to stay roughly the same, but your rents can go up, 2, 3, 5% every year. And right now we're seeing a steady incline in rents because there's a bigger housing demand. So it's kind of a longer game plan. What we talk about, and like I said, about 5-7 years, if you're going to still be in the same area and would like to live and own in a house, it's usually a good decision.
Absolutely. Well, what kind of other questions do people have, though, other than, I'm going to be here, I'm not going to be here, does that make it right? I mean, are there some fears that you typically see with renters moving to being first-time home buyers?
Well, they're typical of any, now I own it and now I'm responsible for taking care of it. So there is always a discussion about maintenance and, how to take care of a house and how to budget for that. And with my rental property experience, I'm kind of on top of that. So that usually benefits new buyers.
Well, there is a lot of maintenance that goes into owning a home. I mean, I rent, and our dishwasher broke the other day, and I was so pleased that I didn't have to deal with it by myself. But, I think there's a lot of things that you need to educate people on, even just aside from the maintenance. And I think that, educating first-time home buyers probably takes a lot more effort than it does someone going through the process for the second time.
Definitely. And then you also, when you look at your monthly costs, even if they are slightly higher than they are renting, there are the tax benefits that you don't get when you're renting. You pay your rent and that's it. It's over with. And with a mortgage, you can get a tax break at the end of the year. So that does go towards that long-term goal, getting, maybe it's $100 more than you like to spend or more than your rent now. But you might get in savings throughout the year when you file your taxes $150 off per month. So you actually might be even cheaper than renting.
Yeah. And it sounds like, people have some excuses when it comes to trying to make that transition. And you'd mentioned some renters roadblocks and some typical things that are preventing people from making that next step. And one of them was not thinking that they might not have as much money as they need for a down payment. But is that where some of those typical programs and education come into place too?
Yeah, people don't realize how inexpensive it can be to put down. It is a lot of money, but when we're talking about 3%, on $100,000, there are properties in the under $100,000 range. That's Everett.
Never?
Yeah.
Everett?
Well, Everett. I mean, Everett was just a current deal I was working on, but there are townhomes. It doesn't have to be a house. It can be townhome and condo options that are out there. There are houses in the 150, 170 range. And typically what I do is I show in a mortgage what their payment would be and compare it to a local rent, what the local rents are. And typically that is cheaper, and it's worth putting that down payment, that 3%. So you're looking at, $3,000 to maybe under $10,000 to put down on a property, have a cheaper monthly expense. You're also locking in on current rates, which are at an all-time low, and you're saving your money in the long term. So rents are going to go up regularly. They always do. But if you lock in now on a mortgage, it's going to stay the same. And so if your income increases over the next 10 years, which typically it does, you lowered your expenses because your mortgage has not increased.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, people, if they've lived in just one area for a long time, they might have a sense of how much homes might cost there, but without working with a professional like yourself, might not be aware of the other opportunities that maybe just lie 5, 10, 15 minutes away or a little bit outside of the city or something like that.
Yeah, you might be a renter that's down in Green Lake or Ballard, and you might not be able to afford a home in that area. It is a higher expensive area, but moving just out to Shoreline, a little further away, which like you said, about 10, 15 minutes away, there are good deals. The housing prices do, as you move away from downtown, they do go down. And there are a lot of options out there that really, you're gaining probably a house and a yard, things you might not have in the renter environment. You're gaining a little bit more privacy, and it's your own place that you can do what you want with. You can paint whatever colors, you can make changes, and there's no landlord to call who might not be as quick to fix something as you would like. It's you can take care of your own stuff, and a lot of people really appreciate that. After they've been in a house for a while, they can make it their own way, make it nicer, add their own custom touches, and a lot of pride of ownership goes into that also. Yeah,
absolutely. And you had mentioned landlords, and something that we do talk a lot about with you on the show is investment property, and that can kind of be part of your game plan too, maybe if you want to be a first-time home buyer, as you've mentioned briefly before on other shows, but I was hoping maybe you could go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, the owner-occupied rental. Yeah, so that's where you can purchase a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex with that same little down payment, and so that that 3%, 3.5% down, and live in one of the units and rent out the other units. And that's where you get a great investment, because most of them you're actually paying significant. You're making money usually to live there, or your housing expenses are half of what your rent would be.
Right.
Simple examples: a duplex in the $300,000 range, one half rents for $1,100. You're living in your own unit. That $1,100 gets applied to your $1,300 mortgage. So you're paying $200 a month to live there. And now you have an investment property, and you're saving a lot of money. So you'll quickly regain that 3% you put down on the property. Yeah.
And those opportunities are definitely out there, because like you've talked about it before, you've helped people with those deals. But that's something that I think that process, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, is something you can't do on your own. You definitely need help.
That's a unique one. Yeah, because you're getting into your first-time home purchase, your first time being a landlord. How do I find renters? So it's not for everybody, but it is an option that a lot of people, once explained to them, really like it, and it has worked out very well for a lot of people. It's a great way to start building that investment portfolio, taking advantage of owner-occupied loans, and really saving money. It really does cut down your expenses.
But picking the right location is really important, with that option as well, correct?
Definitely, yeah, because you want to be in an area where people want to rent, so you don't want to, and will pay a decent rent for you. And so that's something that is factored into probably the purchase price of the place. And it's also something that we try to, when I work with a client, try to evaluate the rental score. We kind of have my own little, how easy would it be?
What's a rental score? I haven't heard you talk about that before.
We factor in job market in the area. So if you're closer to Microsoft, closer to Boeing, those are big businesses around here that usually attract a lot of people from different parts of the country, and they might be so that's a more rentable spot. Okay. So you don't necessarily always have to be in the city to be a high demand rental area. There are parts in Microsoft campuses in Redmond area where people want to rent and be close to work. A lot of people
looking to live, rent, buy, own.
Yes, whatever. And that's also if you got into student housing. So if you're near, we have some pretty UW definitely, but we also have the community college market has picked up significantly because there's more students going to college, and there's more demand for the cheaper community colleges. But there's still a housing demand that is not fulfilled. There's a big housing demand right now for a lot of the community colleges. So those are options where you can usually save money from not buying in the prime downtown locations, but still get a good rent and very little vacancy rates, which can affect your bottom line significantly. So definitely, you can. That rental score, we factor in its rentability. So is it a nice place? What can we get? What are the average rents? Is it close to where people want to be? And like I said, those other factors go into it to come up with, is this a good place to buy and turn into a rental?
It's so important, and definitely going to be the determining factor of how successful you'll be in that. And if you're listening right now and you're thinking about owning a home for the first time or becoming, the owner of some investment properties, you can probably tell it's something you're going to need help with and advice on. And you can reach Jared Fraser at jaredfraser.net for more questions. He's always happy to help you out and provide advice. So thanks again for joining us. Again, Jared Fraser, real estate agent with Keller Williams. You can find him at jaredfraser.net or startowningrentals.com. And if you are a first-time home buyer and you're moving in, what you might want to learn a little bit more about is how to decorate or retrofit or remodel that space. And we're going to have Eileen Schoner join us next to chat a little bit with us about that. This is